Caleb Morrison's hands shook as he counted the coins. $12. Enough for grain, enough to ride away. He looked at the woman standing 3 feet from him. Hollow cheeks, patched dress, pride burning in her eyes like the last ember in a dying fire. The storekeeper was smiling. The men were laughing. The child behind her was trying not to cry. Caleb had promised himself he'd never get involved again. Not after what happened to his brother. Not after he'd learned that caring got people killed. He pushed the coins across the counter anyway. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Stay with me until the very end. You won't believe where this journey takes us. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's begin. The summer heat was a living thing in Dry Creek, pressing down on everything that moved and everything that didn't. Caleb Morrison had forgotten how much he hated this town. 18 months since his last visit. 18 months of keeping to himself up north of the ranch, tending horses, avoiding people, avoiding memories. But the foal was sick. The young mare had pneumonia, and Doc Henderson's medicine powder had run out. So here he was, back in the place where everyone knew everyone's business, and no one knew how to mind their own. The general store door stuck when he pushed it. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of leather, tobacco, and something sour he couldn't name. 3 men stood at the counter: Nathaniel Garrett, Pike Stevens, and the store owner, Thomas Webb. They were laughing about something. "I'm telling you," Webb was saying, his gut shaking with each chuckle. "She came in here last week with nothing but lint in her purse. Wanted credit. Can you imagine?" "That woman's got nerve," Pike said. "I'll give her that." Nathaniel Garrett didn't laugh. He never did. "Nerve don't pay debts. Her husband owed me $500 when he died. She inherits the debt, far as I'm concerned." Caleb moved toward the shelf where Webb kept medical supplies, trying to ignore them. It wasn't his business. Nothing in this town was his business anymore. "Afternoon, Morrison," Webb called out. "Didn't expect to see you. Thought you'd turned into a hermit up there." "Need medicine powder for a sick horse," Caleb said, not turning around. "Same as last time?" "Same." The door opened. The men stopped talking. Caleb glanced over his shoulder and saw her. She couldn't have been more than 27, but her eyes looked older. Dark hair pulled back severe. A dress that had been mended so many times it was more thread than fabric. She held herself like a queen walking into a palace, not a widow walking into a trap. Behind her, half hidden in her skirts, was a little girl with huge brown eyes. "Mrs. Bennett," Webb said, his voice changing to something slick and false. "What brings you in today?" "Flour," the woman said. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "Salt. And lard, if the price hasn't gone up again." "Price is what it is, ma'am. Cash up front. You know my policy." She pulled a small cloth purse from her pocket and set it on the counter. Caleb could hear the coins inside. Not many. Webb took his time counting them, spreading them out on the wood like he was performing for an audience. "This here's $4.32. "That should cover flour and salt." "Should. But like I said, prices have gone up. Flour's $2.50 a bag now." "It was $2 last month." "That was last month, Mrs. Bennett." Nathaniel Garrett stepped closer. He was a tall man, well-dressed for Dry Creek, with cold eyes and a mouth that never quite smiled right. "You still owe your husband's debt, Clara. $500. We could work something out, you know. I've got a position at the saloon, serving drinks, keeping the customers happy. You'd make that debt back in a year, maybe less." The little girl pressed closer to her mother's leg. Clara Bennett's jaw tightened. "I'll find another way, Mr. Garrett." "There ain't another way. You got no husband, no family, No prospects. That little farm of yours is falling apart. Winter's coming. What are you going to do when the cold sets in, and you got no wood, no food, no... I'll manage. You'll starve. Then I'll starve honestly. Pike Stevens snorted. Honestly. That's rich, coming from a woman who... Watch your mouth. The words came out of Caleb's mouth before he could stop them. All four men turned to stare at him. Clara Bennett's eyes widened slightly. Pike's face reddened. This ain't your concern, Morrison. Didn't say it was. But a man talks to a lady with respect. That's all. Lady? Pike laughed. You don't know who you're defending. This here's the woman who poisoned her husband. Everyone knows it. Frank Bennett was healthy as a horse. Then one day, he's dead, and she's real quick to get him in the ground. My husband, Clara said, her voice tight with controlled fury, died in a mining accident. The tunnel collapsed. 3 other men died with him. Or have you all forgotten that? Convenient, Garrett said softly. Real convenient, him dying when he did. Right when the debt came due. Caleb set the medicine powder on the counter and pulled out his money. $12, every cent he'd brought for supplies. He looked at Webb. Ring up her order. Flour, salt, lard. Add a bag of cornmeal and a tin of molasses. Silence fell over the store. Clara turned to him. I can't. I'm not asking if you can, Caleb said. He kept his eyes on Webb. I'm telling you to ring it up. Now hold on, Garrett said, his voice dropping low and dangerous. You're making a mistake here, friend. Not your friend. And it's my money. I'll spend it how I please. Garrett's hand moved toward his belt. Not to his gun, but close enough to be a message. You just rode into something you don't understand. This woman is standing right here, Clara cut in, and doesn't need men talking about her like she's not. Caleb looked at her for the first time, really looked at her. Her cheeks were hollow from hunger. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. But her eyes were clear and fierce and unbroken. I don't know your story, ma'am, Caleb said quietly, but I know bullying when I see it. And I know a woman trying to feed her child shouldn't have to beg. I wasn't begging. The words came out sharp as a slap. Didn't say you were. Webb cleared his throat nervously, glancing between Garrett and Caleb. I'll just get those items. As Webb moved around gathering supplies, Garrett stepped closer to Caleb. Close enough that Caleb could smell the whiskey on his breath. You're new to this situation, Garrett said, his voice low enough that only Caleb could hear. So I'll give you one chance to walk away. This woman killed her husband to avoid paying what he owed. The sheriff knows it. The whole town knows it. You stick your nose in this, you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of a lot of people. I'm on the side of doing what's right. Right, Garrett smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You think you're a hero? You think one bag of flour makes you her savior? She's poison, Morrison. She'll drag you down with her. The little girl whimpered. Clara's hand immediately dropped to the child's head, stroking her hair with a tenderness that made something twist in Caleb's chest. Your total's $8.40, Webb said, setting the packages on the counter. Caleb laid down a $10 bill. Keep the change for the next person who comes up short. That's real noble of you, Pike said with a sneer. Bet you think she's gonna thank you real special-like. Caleb picked up his medicine powder and turned to leave. As he passed Clara, he touched the brim of his hat. Ma'am? Wait. Her voice stopped him at the door. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's common decency. Seems to be in short supply around here. I'll pay you back. He paused, looking back at her. She was standing straighter now, her daughter tucked against her side, her packages clutched in her arms like armor. No need. There's every need. I won't be in debt to another man. Not ever again. Something in the way she said it, the weight of old wounds, old fights, old scars, made Caleb nod. Fair enough. You know where the Morrison Ranch is? North of here, past the old creek bed. When you've got the means, you can settle up there. No rush. He turned to leave again, but her voice followed him one more time. Why? He didn't turn around. Why what, ma'am? Why help me? You don't know me. Everyone else in this town... She trailed off, but he heard what she didn't say. Everyone else in this town wants me gone. Or worse. Caleb glanced back. The little girl was watching him with those huge eyes, and for just a moment he saw another child. A boy with the same dark hair, the same frightened expression. His brother, the day everything went wrong. Because somebody should, Caleb said quietly. Then he walked out into the brutal heat of the afternoon. Behind him, he heard Garrett's voice, loud enough to carry through the door. You just made an enemy today, Morrison. Hope she's worth it. Caleb untied his horse from the hitching post and swung into the saddle. His hands were steadier now. The $12 was gone. The medicine powder sat in his saddlebag. And somewhere in his chest, something that had been frozen for 18 months was beginning to thaw. He told himself it was just an impulse. Just one good deed in a town full of bad ones. He'd ride home, tend to his sick foal, and forget about the woman with the fierce eyes and the hungry child. But as he rode out of Dry Creek, the sun beating down on his shoulders, he knew he was lying to himself. He'd be back. 3 days passed. The foal recovered. The summer heat didn't break, and Caleb found himself standing in his barn, staring at a sack of seed corn that he didn't need, trying to convince himself he wasn't going to ride south. You're being a fool, he said out loud to the empty barn. His horse, a gray gelding named Ash, snorted in what might have been agreement. The seed corn had been sitting in his storage room for 2 years, too old to plant in quantity, but still viable in small amounts. He'd been meaning to give it to someone, anyone who could use it. That's what he told himself as he loaded it into his saddlebag. That's what he told himself as he mounted Ash and pointed him toward Dry Creek. That's what he was still telling himself when the Bennett farm came into view, and all the lies dried up in his throat. The place was barely holding together. The house leaned to one side like a drunk trying to stand straight. Half the fence was down. The barn door hung by one hinge, and in what should have been a garden, there was nothing but cracked dirt and a few stubborn weeds. In the middle of the yard, the little girl sat in the dust, playing with a corn husk doll. She saw him first. Her head snapped up, and she scrambled to her feet, running for the house. "Mama! Mama, there's a man!" The door banged open, and Clara Bennett appeared with a shotgun in her hands. She saw him and stopped, the barrel dropping slightly, but not all the way. "Mr. Morrison." "Ma'am?" He stayed in the saddle, hands visible. "Didn't mean to startle you." "You didn't. Emma startles easy." She studied him for a long moment. "What are you doing here?" "Brought seed corn. Thought you might could use it for a garden." Her eyes narrowed. "I told you I'd pay you back when I could. I didn't ask for more charity." "It's not charity. It's old seed. Been sitting in my barn for 2 years. Either you use it or I throw it out. Seems wasteful to throw it out." "So I'm doing you a favor by taking your garbage?" Despite everything, Caleb almost smiled. "If that makes it easier to accept, yes, ma'am." The shotgun lowered another inch. "You're persistent, I'll give you that." "I've been called worse." Emma peeked out from behind her mother's skirts. Clara's expression softened slightly when she looked down at her daughter. "It's all right, baby. He's a friend." "I ain't seen him before," Emma whispered. "That's because he lives far away, but he's the man who helped us in town, remember?" The little girl studied Caleb with serious eyes. Finally, she nodded. "The nice man." "I don't know about nice," Caleb said, "but I try not to be mean." Clara sighed and set the shotgun just inside the doorway. "I suppose you want to come in." "Only if you're offering. Otherwise, I can leave the seat and be on my way." She hesitated, and he could see the war playing out on her face. Pride versus need, suspicion versus hope. Finally, she stepped aside. "Come in, but I don't have much to offer by way of hospitality." "Water's fine, if you've got it." The inside of the house was as poor as the outside suggested. 3 chairs that didn't match, a table that wobbled, shelves with more gaps than goods. But everything was clean. The floor had been swept, the dishes, what few there were, had been washed. The poverty was undeniable, but so was the dignity. Clara poured him water from a clay pitcher. Emma sat in the corner, still watching him with those huge eyes. "How's your horse?" Clara asked, her voice carefully neutral. "She's better. Medicine worked." "Good." She set the water in front of him, but didn't sit down. "The seed corn. How much do you want for it?" "Told you, it's old seed. No charge." "Everything has a price, Mr. Morrison. I learned that the hard way." He took a drink of water, choosing his words carefully. "What's your husband's story?" Her whole body went rigid. "Excuse me?" "Garrett said he owed a debt, $500. That true?" "What business is that of yours?" "None, but I figure if I'm getting mixed up in this, I ought to know what I'm mixed up in." "You're not mixed up in anything. You bought some groceries and brought some old seed. That doesn't make you part of my life." "Maybe not, but Garrett seems to think otherwise." She turned away, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "My husband was a gambler, Mr. Morrison, a drunk and a gambler. He lost more hands than he won, and when he ran out of money, he borrowed from Garrett. The debt was real, but Frank died before he could pay it." "Mining accident?" "Yes." "You don't sound convinced." She whirled on him then, eyes blazing. "Of course I'm not convinced. The mine had been inspected 2 weeks before. The supports were sound. Then suddenly, the day after Garrett demanded his money, the whole tunnel comes down, and my husband and 3 other men are buried." "You tell me if that sounds like an accident." Caleb set down his water. "What does the sheriff say?" "The sheriff says what Garrett tells him to say. Garrett owns half this town, and the other half owes him money. No one's going to investigate. No one cares. So they blame you instead." "Of course they do. It's easier to blame a widow than to question a powerful man." Her voice cracked slightly. "They say I poisoned him. They say I wanted him dead so I wouldn't have to pay the debt. Never mind that I inherit the debt anyway. Never mind that I loved him once, even if he—" She stopped herself. "Even if he what?" "Nothing. It doesn't matter. He's dead. I'm alive. And Garrett wants his money, or—" She glanced at Emma, then lowered her voice. "Or other things." The temperature in the room seemed to drop despite the summer heat. "What kind of other things?" "The kind I won't agree to. Ever." Caleb stood up slowly. "I see." "Do you?" She laughed bitterly. "I don't think you do, Mr. Morrison. I don't think you understand what it's like to be a woman alone in a place like this. Every man in town thinks I'm either a murderer or a whore. Most think I'm both. My daughter is 7 years old, and she already knows what it means to be hated. So forgive me if I don't trust your charity, no matter how nicely you package it." Emma started crying softly in the corner. Clara's eyes closed, and for just a moment, Caleb saw the exhaustion, the fear, the weight of carrying too much alone for too long. "I'm sorry," Clara whispered, moving to her daughter. "Mama's sorry, baby. I didn't mean to raise my voice." Caleb picked up his hat from the table. "I'll leave the seed outside. Plant it if you want, or don't. Either way, no one will bother you about it." He was halfway to the door when her voice stopped him. "Why are you doing this?" He turned. She was holding Emma now, the little girl's face buried in her mother's shoulder. "I had a brother once," Caleb said quietly. "Younger than me. There were men who hurt him, and I didn't step in because I didn't want trouble. I thought if I kept my head down, if I minded my own business, everything would work out." "What happened?" "He died. And I learned that sometimes minding your own business is just another way of being a coward." The silence stretched between them, heavy with old grief and new understanding. Finally, Clara nodded. "The seed. If I plant it, you'll have to teach me how. I was a school teacher before I married. I know books, not farming." "I can do that." "And the debt, the $8 from the store. I will pay you back." "I know you will." "One more thing." She straightened, and despite the worn dress and the hungry child in her arms, she looked like a woman who had never learned to surrender. "If you're lying to me, if you're like the others, if you want something from me that I won't give, I'll kill you. I don't care if they hang me for it." Caleb met her eyes steadily. "Fair enough." He walked out into the sunlight, leaving the sack of seed by the porch steps. As he mounted Ash, he saw Emma watching him from the window, her small hand pressed against the glass. He touched his hat to her, and for the first time, she smiled. It was a small smile, uncertain and brief, but it was real. And as Caleb Morrison rode away from the broken-down Bennett farm, he knew with absolute certainty that he just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Garrett would come for him. The town would turn on him. There would be blood and fire and hard choices ahead. But for the first time in 18 months, he felt like he was doing something that mattered, even if it killed him. Caleb came back the next morning with a shovel and a canteen of water. He didn't announce himself, just started digging rows in the hard-packed dirt where Clara's garden should have been. The door opened after 20 minutes. "I didn't invite you back." He kept digging. "Seed won't plant itself. I can dig my own rows." "I'm sure you can. But I'm already here, and the sun's only getting hotter." She stood on the porch for a long moment, and he could feel her wrestling with it. The pride that wanted to send him away, and the practicality that knew she needed help. Practicality won. She came down the steps with her own shovel, the handle wrapped in cloth to protect her hands. They worked side by side in silence. Emma watched from the window. After an hour, Clara straightened, pressing her hand to the small of her back. "You plant too deep," she said. "Deep keeps the moisture in. Deep also means the shoots have to work harder to reach sunlight." He looked at her. "Thought you didn't know farming." "I don't, but I can read. Had a book on agriculture once, before I had to burn it for heat last winter." The casual way she said it, like burning books for warmth was just another Tuesday, made something clench in his chest. He adjusted his digging to a shallower depth. "That better, school teacher?" "Don't mock me." "I'm not. I'm listening." She studied him, searching for the lie. When she didn't find it, something in her face softened just slightly. "The rows should run east to west, maximize the sun exposure." "Yes, ma'am." They worked until noon. Clara brought out water and 3 pieces of hardtack that she tried to pass off as biscuits. Caleb ate his without comment, though it was hard enough to crack a tooth. Emma sat between them on the porch steps, still silent, still watching. "She don't talk much, does she?" Caleb asked quietly. "She used to, before her father died, before the town started." Clara's jaw tightened. She'll talk when she's ready. No rush. Emma's head tilted, like she was surprised by that. Clara noticed too. Mr. Morrison, Clara said carefully, you should know what you're getting into. Coming here, helping us, it's going to cost you. I know. I don't think you do. Garrett doesn't make idle threats, and the town follows his lead. You'll lose customers, friends, if you have them. They'll talk about you the way they talk about me. Let them talk. It's not that simple. Why not? She set down her hardtack, her hands trembling slightly. Because talk turns to action. Because men who feel justified in their righteousness do terrible things. Because my husband is dead, Mr. Morrison, and I don't think it was an accident. And if you make yourself my ally, you might be next. The words hung in the air between them. Emma's eyes went wide. Caleb took a slow drink of water. Your husband, Frank. What was he like? Why does that matter? Just curious. She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, he was charming when I met him. Funny. He said he wanted to build something, make a life. I was 20 and stupid and believed him. Her voice went flat. 6 months after we married, I learned he only wanted a woman to cook and clean while he drank and gambled. Emma was born a year later. That's when the hitting started. Caleb's hands tightened on his canteen. Don't, Clara said sharply. Don't you dare pity me. I survived. That's more than some women can say. I don't pity you. I'm just trying to understand. Understand what? Why you think I'd walk away? She laughed, bitter and sharp. Because everyone does. Because I'm damaged goods in a town that values women like livestock. Because... Mama, Emma whispered. It was the first word she'd spoken since Caleb arrived. Mama, don't cry. Clara's hand flew to her face. She wiped away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I'm fine, baby. Mama's fine. Caleb stood up, gathering the tools. I'll come back tomorrow, finish the planting. You don't have to. I know. He was halfway to his horse when Emma's voice called out, small but clear. Mr. Caleb? He turned. The little girl was standing at the edge of the porch, her mother's hand in hers. Yes, miss? Are you going to stay? The question was so simple, so direct, that it hit him harder than any of Garrett's threats could have. He looked at Clara. She was watching him with those fierce, wounded eyes, waiting for him to prove her right, waiting for him to leave like everyone else. Yeah, Caleb said quietly. I'm going to stay. Emma smiled. It was the second smile he'd seen from her, and it carved something permanent into his chest. He rode back to his ranch that evening, with dirt under his nails and Clara's words echoing in his head. My husband is dead, and I don't think it was an accident. If she was right, if Garrett had killed Frank Bennett to collect a debt or to have Clara for himself, then Caleb had just painted a target on his own back. The smart thing would be to ride away, head north, find another town, forget about the widow and her daughter. Instead, he spent the evening sharpening his knife and cleaning his rifle. The next 3 days followed the same pattern. Caleb arrived at dawn. They worked the garden. Clara taught him what she'd learned from books. He taught her what he'd learned from doing. Emma watched, gradually creeping closer, until by the 4th day she was handing them seeds and patting down dirt with her small hands. On the 5th day, Clara spoke while they were planting the last row. I need to ask you something. Ask. Why aren't you married? The question caught him off guard. That's personal. So is everything I've told you. Fair point. He drove the shovel into the ground and leaned on it. I was engaged once, 8 years ago. Girl named Rebecca. She was a merchant's daughter. Pretty. Smart. Her father approved of me because I had land and prospects.
What happened?
My brother happened. He got into trouble with some men in town. Bad men. They beat him half to death over a card game he didn't even play in. They just wanted to hurt someone, and he was there. Caleb's voice went rough. I could have stopped it. I was in the saloon when it started. But Rebecca's father was there too, and he pulled me aside, told me to stay out of it, said it wasn't my fight. You listened. I listened, and my brother died 3 days later from his injuries. Rebecca tried to comfort me, said it wasn't my fault, said I'd done the right thing by not getting involved. He met Clara's eyes. I called off the engagement that same day. Because she was wrong. Because she believed that walking away from someone who needed help was the right thing to do. And I couldn't marry someone who thought like that. Not after what it cost me. Clara was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm sorry about your brother. Me too. What was his name? Thomas. Tommy. He was 16. Emma had stopped playing with the corn husks. She was listening, her face solemn. My papa hurt people, she said suddenly. Both adults turned to stare at her. He hurt Mama. I heard her crying. Is that why God took him away? Clara's face went white. Emma, is it? The little girl's voice was insistent. Is that why? Caleb knelt down in the dirt, so he was eye level with her. I don't know why God does what he does, miss, but I know your mama did her best to keep you safe. And I know crying don't mean weakness. Sometimes crying means you're strong enough to feel. Did you cry when your brother died? Every day for a year. Do you still? Sometimes. Emma nodded, processing this. Then she did something that shocked both of them. She stepped forward and hugged Caleb around the neck. Her small arms were surprisingly strong. I'm glad you came, she whispered. Mama smiles now. When she pulled back and ran toward the house, Caleb looked at Clara. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What? He asked. Nothing. It's just, you're different than I expected. Different how? Good different. She picked up her shovel quickly, turning away. We should finish this row before the heat gets worse. That night, Caleb was brushing down ash in his barn when he heard horses approaching. 3 of them. He recognized Nathaniel Garrett's black stallion before he saw the man himself. Garrett rode right up to the barn entrance, Pike Stevens and another man flanking him. All 3 were armed. Evening, Morrison. Caleb kept brushing ash, but his hand was close to the rifle leaning against the stall. Garrett? Heard you've been spending time out at the Bennett place. That a crime? Depends on what you're doing there. Planting a garden. Garrett smiled, but it was the smile of a snake sizing up a mouse. That's real charitable of you, but I'm wondering if maybe you don't understand the situation. I understand it fine. Do you? Because Clara Bennett's husband owed me $500 when he died. That debt don't disappear just because Frank's in the ground. And I've been more than patient, waiting for her to find a way to pay. Maybe you should write it off as a loss. I don't write off losses, Morrison. I collect what's owed, one way or another. Garrett leaned forward in his saddle. Now, if Clara wants to make a deal, work off the debt in a way that benefits us both, that's between her and me. But you getting in the middle of it complicates things. Seems to me the only complication is you not taking no for an answer. Pike Stevens laughed. He don't know, Nat. He really don't know. Know what? Caleb asked. Garrett's eyes glittered. Your widow friend ain't as innocent as she seems. See, Frank Bennett didn't just owe me money. He was my partner. We worked together on certain business ventures. And the day before he died, Frank came to me scared out of his mind, saying Clara had figured out what we were doing and was threatening to go to the law. Caleb's hand stilled on the brush. What kind of business ventures? The kind the law frowns on. Mining claims we acquired through less than legal means. Shipments that went missing and turned up in our warehouse. Nothing violent, you understand, just creative entrepreneurship. Garrett's voice hardened, but Clara found Frank's ledgers, started asking questions. 2 days later, that mine collapsed and Frank was dead, and those ledgers disappeared. You're saying she killed him? I'm saying she had motive and opportunity. I'm saying that mine was inspected and declared safe. I'm saying that somebody set charges in that tunnel, and the only person who knew Frank would be down there that specific day was his wife. Caleb's mind raced. The sheriff investigated? Sheriff Watson is a thorough man. He questioned Clara, searched her property, found nothing. But we all know how clever some women can be. Garrett straightened in his saddle. Point is, Morrison, you're putting yourself between me and a woman who might be a murderer. That strike you as wise? If she killed him, why didn't the sheriff arrest her? No proof. No body intact enough to show how the explosion started. No ledgers. Just a widow crying pretty tears and a whole town feeling sorry for her. Garrett's voice dripped with contempt. But I know what I know. And if you keep helping her, people are going to wonder if maybe you're involved too. Maybe she's got you fooled like she fooled Frank. Maybe you're her next mark. I'm not her mark. Then what are you? None of your damn business. The temperature in the barn dropped. Garrett's hand moved to his gun, not drawing it, just resting there. You're making a mistake. Last chance to walk away clean. Caleb set down the brush and faced them fully. His own gun was still on his hip, his rifle within reach. I don't walk away from people who need help. You should know that by now. Even if helping them gets you killed? Even then. Garrett studied him for a long moment. Then he smiled again, and this time it was genuinely amused. You know what? I almost respect that. Stupid, but honorable. Fine. Keep playing farmer with the widow. But when this blows up in your face, and it will, don't say I didn't warn you. They rode off into the darkness, leaving Caleb alone with his thoughts and the smell of horse and hay. He stood there for a long time, turning over what Garrett had said. Was it possible? Could Clara have killed her husband? He thought about the way she held Emma, the way she'd burned books for heat rather than steel, the way she'd pulled a shotgun on him that first day, ready to defend herself, but never aggressive, the way she'd cried when she talked about surviving Frank's fists. No, whatever else Clara Bennett might be, she wasn't a murderer. But the ledgers, those were real. And if they implicated Garrett in illegal activity, then Frank's death being a murder made sense, just not with Clara as the killer. Caleb saddled Ash again. It was a 2-hour ride to town, and Sheriff Watson wouldn't appreciate being woken after midnight. But this couldn't wait. The sheriff's house was dark when Caleb arrived. He pounded on the door until a light flickered on inside. Watson appeared in his nightshirt, gun in hand, looking more annoyed than alarmed. Morrison, what the hell? Need to talk about Frank Bennett's death. Watson's expression shuddered. That case is closed. Is it? Man died in a mining accident. Tragic, but clear cut. Now go home. Garrett says Clara killed him. Garrett says a lot of things. But you investigated. Watson sighed and stepped aside. Come in, but this better be important. Inside, the sheriff poured them both coffee and sat down heavily. "What's your interest in this, Morrison? You sweet on the widow?" "I'm interested in the truth. Truth is, I don't know what happened in that mine. Could have been an accident. Could have been sabotage. Could have been Frank setting charges to bring down more ore and miscalculating." Watson rubbed his eyes. "I questioned Clara Bennett. Woman was devastated. Had an alibi, she was in town buying supplies when it happened. Multiple witnesses. What about the ledgers Garrett mentioned?" Watson's hand stilled on his coffee cup. "How do you know about those?" "Garrett told me. Said they proved Frank was involved in illegal business. If such ledgers existed, and if they showed criminal activity, that would be a matter for the law." Watson's voice was carefully neutral. "But no such ledgers were ever found." "Did you look?" "I did my job, Morrison." "That's not an answer." Watson stood up, his patience clearly exhausted. "Here's what I know. Frank Bennett was a drunk and a gambler who got in over his head with dangerous men. When he died, his widow was left with nothing but debts and a reputation in tatters. She's struggling to survive, and she don't need you stirring up old trouble." "What if the trouble never went away? What if Garrett killed Frank and is now using the debt to control Clara?" "That's a serious accusation." "I'm seriously making it." Watson stared at him. "You got proof?" "Not yet." "Then here's my advice. Stay out of it. Go back to your ranch, stop visiting the Bennett place. Because whether you believe it or not, you're making things worse for that woman, not better." "How do you figure?" "Because Garrett owns half this town, and the half he don't own, he controls through debts and favors and fear. You think you're helping Clara by standing with her? All you're doing is proving to everyone that she's trouble, that she corrupts good men, that she's dangerous." Watson walked to the door and opened it. "Leave her alone, Morrison. It's the kindest thing you can do." Caleb rode back to his ranch, with Watson's words echoing in his head. By the time he arrived, dawn was breaking, and he hadn't slept at all. He told himself he'd stay away, give Clara and Emma space, let the town forget about his involvement. He lasted until noon. Then he saddled Ash and rode south. Clara was in the garden when he arrived, her dress soaked with sweat, her hands raw from digging. She looked up when she heard his horse, and the relief that flashed across her face before she could hide it told him everything he needed to know. "You came back." "Said I would." "Thought maybe you'd thought better of it." "Did you kill your husband, Clara?" The question hit her like a slap. She straightened, and for a moment, he thought she might throw the shovel at him. Instead, she spoke in a voice carved from ice. "No." "Garrett says you had motive. Says Frank was his partner in illegal business. Says you found ledgers that proved it and threatened to go to the law." "All of that's true, except the killing part." Caleb dismounted. "Tell me what happened." She stabbed the shovel into the ground and walked toward the house. "Emma, go inside. Now." The little girl, who'd been playing nearby, ran for the door without argument. When she was gone, Clara turned back to Caleb. "I did find Frank's ledgers. He was stealing mining claims, forging deeds, working with Garrett to cheat people out of their land. When I confronted him, he hit me so hard I couldn't hear right for a week." Her hand went unconsciously to her ear. "I told him I was going to the sheriff. He laughed, said Watson was in Garrett's pocket, that no one would believe me, that if I tried to expose them, I'd end up dead in a ditch somewhere." "What did you do?" "I hid the ledgers, planned to wait until I could get to a federal marshal, someone outside Garrett's reach. But 2 days later, Frank was dead." Her voice cracked. "I didn't kill him, Caleb. I hated him, yes. Wanted him gone, yes. But I didn't kill him." "Where are the ledgers now?" "Gone. I hid them in the barn, and when I went to retrieve them after Frank's funeral, they were gone. Someone had been through my things. They took the ledgers and left everything else. Garrett. Or someone working for him. They've been trying to figure out if I made copies, if I told anyone else. That's why he wants me close. Not just for the debt, but because I'm the only one who knows what was in those books. Caleb absorbed this. Does Emma know any of this? She knows her father was a bad man. That's all she needs to know. And the debt? Is that real? Every penny. Frank gambled it away 3 months before he died. Garrett's been collecting interest since. Clara's laugh was bitter. $500 might as well be $5,000. I'll never pay it off, and Garrett knows it. Then we make sure he can't collect. How? I'm still working on that part. She stared at him. Why are you doing this? Really? Don't give me the line about your brother. There has to be more. Caleb took off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. You want the truth? Please. I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of watching good people suffer while bad people prosper. And I'm tired of doing nothing. He met her eyes. You and Emma. You're fighting to survive with everything you've got. That's worth standing with, even if it costs me. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. You're going to get hurt. Probably. I can't stop you, can I? No, ma'am. Then at least let me teach you how to cook something that won't break your teeth. That hardtack I served you was terrible. Despite everything, Caleb smiled. Deal. That evening, they sat on the porch while Emma slept inside. Clara had made actual biscuits this time, still rough, but edible, and they ate in comfortable silence. My father was a preacher, Clara said suddenly. Died when I was 12. Mama remarried a man who didn't want kids around. I went to live with my aunt in Kansas City. She's the one who taught me to read, got me interested in teaching. When she died, I came west looking for work and met Frank. She stared at the horizon. I used to think God was punishing me for something. But then Emma was born, and I realized she was the point of it all, the reason I survived. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She's the only thing keeping me sane. Caleb wanted to say more, wanted to tell Clara that she was stronger than anyone he'd ever met, that her daughter wasn't the only good thing in her life, that he saw her worth even if the whole damn town was blind. Instead, he said, Garden's looking good. She smiled. You're a terrible liar, Caleb Morrison. But thank you. That night, riding home under a sky full of stars, Caleb made a decision. If Garrett wanted a fight, he'd get one. But it wouldn't be with fists or guns, not yet. It would be with the one thing Garrett couldn't control, the truth. Somewhere in Dry Creek, those ledgers existed. Either Garrett had them, or he'd destroyed them, or someone else had taken them. Caleb would find out which, and when he did, he'd make sure the whole territory knew what Nathaniel Garrett really was, even if it meant burning down everything Garrett had built, even if it meant becoming the kind of man his brother would have been proud of, even if it meant losing everything for a woman and a little girl who'd somehow become his reason to fight. The next morning, Caleb rode into Dry Creek with a plan that was half-formed and mostly desperate. He needed to find those ledgers, or proof they'd existed. He needed leverage against Garrett, and he needed to do it without getting Clara killed in the process. His first stop was the land office. A bored clerk named Wilson sat behind a desk piled with dusty records. Help you? Looking for mining claim records. Bennett property and surrounding area. Say 2 years back. Wilson squinted at him. You related to the Bennetts? Just doing research. Research. The clerk didn't move. That'll be $5. Caleb laid the money down. Wilson took his time, disappearing into a back room. He returned 20 minutes later with a stack of papers that smelled like mold. Bennett filed his claim in 71. Wasn't much there. Barely produced enough to cover costs. Then suddenly, in 72, 3 claims adjacent to his got filed by different men. All 3 sold to Garrett Enterprises within a month. Same thing happened elsewhere? Wilson leaned in, lowering his voice. Between you and me, Garrett's bought up half the mineral rights in this county in the past 3 years. Always the same pattern. Small claims, filed by men who sell cheap, then disappear. Disappear how? Some move on. Some die in accidents. Some just vanish. Wilson's eyes darted toward the door. Look, I've said too much already. You didn't hear this from me. Hear what? Wilson almost smiled. Exactly. Caleb left with more questions than answers. If Garrett was systematically acquiring mining rights through fraud or force, those ledgers weren't just evidence of theft. They were evidence of murder, which meant Garrett would kill to keep them hidden. He was walking toward his horse when a voice called out, "Mr. Morrison!" He turned. A woman stood in the doorway of the general store, thin, graying, with nervous hands that wouldn't stop moving. He recognized her from his first visit, Ruth Cooper, the store owner's wife. "Mrs. Cooper, could I speak with you, privately?" They moved into the alley beside the store. Ruth kept glancing over her shoulder, like she expected someone to jump out. "I know what you're doing," she whispered, "helping Clara Bennett. My husband thinks you're a fool, but I think you're brave. Ma'am, let me finish before I lose my nerve." She pulled a folded paper from her apron pocket. 3 weeks before Frank died, he came into the store. He was drunk, ranting about Garrett, about ledgers, about how he was going to make things right. He dropped this. I kept it, thinking maybe it was important. She pressed the paper into Caleb's hand. It was a receipt for a storage locker in the next town over, dated 2 days before Frank's death. The locker number was 47. "Why are you giving this to me?" Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "Because Clara Bennett never hurt anyone. Because this town has let Garrett turn us all into cowards. Because I have a daughter Emma's age, and if something happened to me, I'd want someone to help her." She backed away. "I never gave you that. We never spoke. If Thomas asks, I won't say a word." She disappeared back into the store. Caleb stared at the receipt, his pulse hammering. If Frank had rented a storage locker right before he died, if he'd been planning to expose Garrett, then maybe he needed to get to that locker. But first, he needed to make sure Clara and Emma were safe. He rode hard to the Bennett place, arriving just as storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Clara was hauling water from the well, her face flushed from the heat. "Caleb, what's wrong?" "I need you and Emma to come to my ranch. Today. Now." "What? Why?" "Because I think I know where Frank hid the ledgers. And if I'm right, Garrett's going to figure it out soon, and when he does, he'll come here." Clara's face went white. "Oh God, Emma!" The little girl appeared in the doorway, sensing her mother's fear. "Mama?" "Pack your things, baby. We're going with Mr. Caleb." "Why?" "Because I said so. Now hurry." Emma ran back inside. Clara grabbed Caleb's arm. "What did you find?" He told her about the storage locker. Her eyes went wide. "That's why he went to Silverton. He said he had business, but I thought it was another card game." Her voice cracked. "He was trying to protect us. In his own stupid way, he was trying to do the right thing. We can talk about this later. Right now, we need to move." They loaded what little they had into Caleb's wagon: clothes, dishes, the few supplies that wouldn't spoil. Emma clutched her corn-husk doll and asked no questions, which somehow made it worse. By the time they finished, the first drops of rain were falling. "What about the garden?" Clara asked. "It'll keep." "Caleb, that's weeks of work." "And your life is worth more than corn." He helped her into the wagon. "Come on." They made it 2 miles before they saw the riders. 5 of them, coming fast from the direction of Dry Creek. Even in the gathering storm, Caleb recognized Garrett's black stallion. "Get down," he told Clara. "Take Emma and hide in the wagon bed. Don't come out no matter what you hear." "Caleb, do it!" She grabbed Emma and dove into the back, pulling a tarp over them. Caleb slowed the wagon to a stop and waited, his hand on his rifle, as Garrett and his men surrounded him. "Well, well," Garrett said, his smile razor-sharp. "Taking a little trip, Morrison?" "Storm's coming. Heading home." "With a wagon full of supplies? That's quite a lot for one man." Garrett leaned forward. "Where's the widow?" "How should I know?" "Because you've been spending every day at her place. Because half the town's seen you riding south. Because you're a terrible liar." Garrett's voice dropped. "Where is she?" "Go to hell." Pike Stevens moved his horse closer, his hand on his gun. "We can search the wagon, Nat." "Don't bother." Garrett's eyes never left Caleb's face. He wouldn't be this calm if she was here. Which means she's either still at her place, or— his smile widened. "Or you already got her somewhere safe. Somewhere you think I can't reach her." Thunder rumbled overhead. Rain began to fall harder. "I'm going to give you one chance, Morrison. Tell me where Clara Bennett is, and you can ride away. Refuse, and things get ugly. They're already ugly. Not as ugly as they're about to get." Garrett drew his gun. So did Pike and the other 3 men. 5 barrels pointed at Caleb's chest. Last chance. Caleb didn't move, didn't reach for his rifle. Just sat there in the rain, staring Garrett down with the kind of calm that only comes from knowing you might die and being okay with it. "Shoot me, and the sheriff will have to investigate. Even Watson can't ignore a murder in broad daylight with witnesses." "What witnesses?" Garrett laughed. "These men? They'll say you drew first. Self-defense. It's a real tragedy when a man loses his head over a woman." "Do it then." The words hung in the air. Rain poured down. Somewhere under the tarp, Emma whimpered, and Caleb's heart seized, praying they wouldn't hear. Garrett holstered his gun slowly. "You know what? I'm not going to kill you, Morrison. I'm going to let you live, just long enough to watch everything you care about burn. Your ranch, your horses, your reputation." He leaned in close. "And when you've lost it all, when you're broken and begging, I'm going to take Clara Bennett right in front of you. And then I'll kill you both." He wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following. Caleb sat frozen until they disappeared into the storm. Then he slumped forward, shaking. "Are they gone?" Clara's voice came from under the tarp. "Yeah." She and Emma emerged, both soaking wet and terrified. Clara threw her arms around Caleb, and he held her, feeling her heart hammering against his chest. "I thought he was going to shoot you," she whispered. "So did I." "Why didn't he?" "Because dead, I'm a martyr. Alive and ruined, I'm a warning." Caleb pulled back, looking at her. "He's going to come after everything I have, my ranch, my animals, everything." "Then we can't go there. We need to—" "No, we go to the ranch. It's the only place I can defend properly. And besides," he managed a grim smile, "I've got a few surprises waiting for anyone stupid enough to attack." They reached his ranch an hour later. It was bigger than Clara had imagined. A solid house, a good barn, corrals with several horses. Proof that Caleb Morrison was more than just a drifter with a good heart. He was a man with something to lose. He got them inside and built a fire while Clara helped Emma into dry clothes. The little girl was crying now, the fear finally breaking through. "I want to go home," Emma sobbed. "I know, baby, I know." Clara held her tight. "But we're safe here. Mr. Caleb will keep us safe." "Promise?" Clara looked at Caleb over her daughter's head. He nodded once, firm and sure. "Promise," Clara said. After Emma fell asleep, Clara and Caleb sat by the fire, neither speaking for a long time. Finally, Clara broke the silence. "You can't go to Silverton." "I have to. If those ledgers are in that storage locker, then they've been there for months. They'll keep another day." She turned to him. "Garrett's going to be watching. The second you leave, he'll either follow you or come here. Either way, someone gets hurt. So what do you suggest? We wait. Let him think he's won. Let him get comfortable. Then we make our move." Caleb wanted to argue, but she was right. Rushing into Silverton now would be suicide. "How long do we wait?" "Until he shows his hand. Until we have an advantage." Clara's jaw set. "I've been running for months, Caleb. I'm tired of running. It's time to fight." "You sure about that?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He studied her face in the firelight, the determination in her eyes, the steel in her spine. This wasn't the broken woman he'd met in the general store. This was someone who'd found something worth fighting for. "Okay," he said, "we fight, but we do it smart." Agreed. The next 3 days were the strangest of Caleb's life. Clara and Emma settled into his home with an ease that felt both natural and terrifying. Emma helped feed the horses, laughing when they nuzzled her for treats. Clara cooked actual meals, not great meals, but edible ones. And at night, after Emma was asleep, Caleb and Clara would sit on the porch, talking about everything and nothing. "You ever think about leaving?" Clara asked on the third night. "Just riding away from all this?" "Every day." "Why don't you?" "Because I tried that once, after Tommy died. I ran for 2 years, working different ranches, different towns, never staying long enough to care about anyone." He stared at the stars. "Being alone's easy. It's caring that's hard." "Is that what you're doing? Caring?" He looked at her. "Yeah, I reckon it is." She was quiet for a moment. "I haven't let myself care about anyone since Frank died. Except Emma. It was safer that way." "And now?" "Now I'm terrified," her voice cracked. "Because if something happens to you because of me, I don't think I could survive it." "Nothing's going to happen to me." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to keep you and Emma safe." She reached over and took his hand. It was the first time she touched him voluntarily, and the warmth of it spread through his whole body. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me. Not the rumors, not the widow, not the scandal. Just me." Clara. A gunshot shattered the night. Then another. Caleb was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. The shots came from the direction of the barn. "Stay here," he ordered Clara. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me." "Caleb, wait!" But he was already running. He reached the barn to find 2 of his horses screaming in their stalls. The barn door was open, swinging in the wind, and on the ground, written in what looked like blood, were 2 words: "Last warning." Caleb checked the horses. They were uninjured, just spooked by the gunfire. But someone had been here. Someone had walked right up to his property and left a message. He was checking the perimeter when he heard Emma scream. He ran back to the house, his heart in his throat. The front door was open. He burst through to find Clara standing in the middle of the room, a kitchen knife in her hand, facing down Pike Stevens. Pike had a gun pointed at Emma, who was frozen by the fireplace, tears streaming down her face. "Real sorry about this, Morrison," Pike said. "But Garrett wants the woman, and I aim to deliver." "Let the girl go." "Can't do that. She's leverage." Caleb raised his rifle. "You hurt her, I'll kill you where you stand. You kill me, my finger twitches, and the girl dies. You want that on your conscience?" Pike's smile was ugly. "Put the rifle down. Do it slow." Caleb's mind raced. If he put down the rifle, they were all dead. If he didn't, Emma was dead. There was no good choice. "Mama," Emma whimpered. "It's okay, baby," Clara said, though her voice shook. "Everything's going to be okay." "Listen to your mama," Pike said. "Be a good girl, and nobody has to—" Clara lunged. She moved so fast that Pike didn't have time to react. The kitchen knife flashed in the firelight, and suddenly Pike was screaming, his gun hand bleeding, the weapon clattering to the floor. Emma ran to her mother. Caleb moved forward, rifle trained on Pike, who was cradling his injured hand and cursing. "You crazy bitch!" Pike shouted. "You cut me!" "Should have killed you," Clara said coldly. "Next time, I will." Caleb grabbed Pike by the collar and dragged him to the door. "You tell Garrett this is what happens to men who threaten children. You tell him if he wants a war, he's got one. And you tell him the next man he sends, I won't be so generous." He threw Pike out into the night. The man stumbled, caught himself, and ran for his horse, still cursing. Caleb turned back to find Clara collapsed on the floor, Emma in her arms, both of them shaking violently. He knelt beside them. "You okay?" "No." Clara looked up at him with wild eyes. "I almost got her killed. If you hadn't been here—" "But I was here, and you were incredible. You saved her." "I stabbed a man." "You defended your daughter. There's a difference." Emma pulled back from her mother, looking at Caleb with those huge eyes. "Mr. Caleb, are the bad men going to keep coming?" He wanted to lie, wanted to tell her everything would be fine, but she deserved the truth. "Yeah, miss, they probably will." "Then we need to fight them." "Emma," Clara started. "No, Mama. You always tell me to be brave, to stand up to bullies. Mr. Caleb's fighting. You're fighting. I want to fight too." Caleb looked at the 7-year-old girl who'd been through more hell than most adults and saw something that took his breath away. Courage. Pure, undiluted courage. "Okay," he said. "Then we'll teach you. How to hide, how to run, how to protect yourself if you need to. How to shoot?" "Emma!" Clara's voice was sharp. "She should know," Caleb said quietly. "Not to kill, but to scare, to buy time." He looked at Clara. "This isn't over. You know that, right? Pike will go back to Garrett, and Garrett will come with more men. We need to be ready." "How do we get ready for an army?" "We don't fight the army. We cut off the head." He stood up, a plan forming. "Tomorrow, I'm going to Silverton. I'm getting those ledgers. And then I'm going to the federal marshal in Boulder Creek. If we can prove Garrett's crimes, the fraud, the murders, then it's over. And if the ledgers aren't there, then we find another way. But either way, this ends, one way or another." That night, Caleb showed Emma how to load his spare revolver. Clara watched with a mixture of horror and resignation, but she didn't stop him. When Emma finally went to bed, Clara pulled Caleb aside. When you go to Silverton tomorrow, I'm coming with you. No, too dangerous. It's dangerous here too. At least in Silverton, I can watch your back. What about Emma? We'll bring her. Keep her close. It's safer than leaving her here alone. Clara's voice hardened. I'm not asking permission, Caleb. I'm telling you. We're a team now. We do this together. He wanted to argue, wanted to lock her and Emma in the house and handle this himself. But looking into her eyes, he realized she was right. They were a team. For better or worse, their fates were tangled together now. Okay, he said. Together. She kissed him then. It was brief and desperate, and tasted like fear and hope, and everything they couldn't say out loud. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining. Don't die on me, Caleb Morrison. Wasn't planning on it. Good. Because I think I might be falling in love with you, and it would be real inconvenient if you got yourself killed now. He stared at her, those words hanging in the air between them like something precious and terrifying. Clara, don't say anything. Just don't die. She went to bed, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the echo of words he'd never expected to hear. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The storm that had been brewing all day finally broke, rain hammering the roof. Caleb stood at the window, watching lightning split the sky, and made himself a promise. He would get those ledgers. He would expose Garrett. And he would keep Clara and Emma safe. Even if it killed him. But preferably not, because apparently someone was falling in love with him, and he'd be damned if he was going to miss what happened next. They left before dawn, when the world was still gray and uncertain. Caleb drove the wagon with Clara beside him and Emma bundled in blankets behind them, half asleep. The road to Silverton was 2 days' ride, but Caleb planned to push hard and make it in one if they could. The longer they were exposed on the open road, the more dangerous things became. Clara hadn't spoken since they'd loaded up. She sat rigid, her hands clenched in her lap, that kitchen knife tucked into her belt. Caleb wanted to say something comforting, but there was nothing comforting about what they were doing. They were riding straight into the mouth of hell and hoping they'd come out the other side. "You're quiet," he said after an hour. "Thinking." About how many ways this can go wrong. She glanced back at Emma. About what happens if we don't make it back. We'll make it back. You can't know that. No, but I can believe it. He looked at her. You still got that receipt? She patted her dress pocket. Right here. Good. When we get there, you stay with Emma. I'll go into the storage facility alone. The hell you will. Clara, we're a team, remember? You don't get to protect me by leaving me behind. Her jaw set. Besides, if something happens to you, I need to know where those ledgers are. He couldn't argue with that logic, much as he wanted to. Fine, but if there's trouble, I know what to do. They rode in silence for another hour. The sun climbed higher, beating down on them without mercy. Emma woke up and asked for water. Clara gave her some, and a piece of jerky that was more leather than meat. Mama, where are we going? To get something that belonged to your papa. Is it important? Very important, baby. Will it make the bad men stop? Clara's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. I hope so. Emma seemed to accept this. She settled back down, playing with her corn-husk doll, humming a tune that Caleb didn't recognize. The sound of it, so innocent, so oblivious to the danger they were in, made his chest ache. They were 3 hours from Silverton when Caleb noticed the dust cloud behind them. At first, he thought it might be another traveler, but the cloud stayed steady, keeping pace. We're being followed. Clara turned, shading her eyes. How many? Can't tell yet. 2, maybe 3 riders. Garrett's men? Who else? He urged the horses faster. Hold on. The wagon bounced over the rough road. Emma cried out as she was jostled. Clara reached back to steady her, all while watching the riders behind them getting closer. They're gaining, she said. I know. What do we do? Caleb's mind raced. They couldn't outrun mounted men in a loaded wagon. They couldn't fight, not with Emma exposed. Their only chance was to reach Silverton before the riders caught up. Pray the town would offer some protection. How good a shot are you? He asked Clara. I've never fired a gun in my life. Today might be the day you learn. He reached under the seat and pulled out a revolver, pressing it into her hands. You see anyone trying to hurt Emma, you point and pull the trigger. Don't think. Just do it. Her hands shook as she took the gun. Caleb, I can't. You can. You stabbed Pike Stevens last night without hesitation. This is the same thing. That was different. He was right in front of me. This is... A gunshot cracked the air. The bullet hit the wagon bed, sending splinters flying. Emma screamed. Clara whirled around, raising the revolver with both hands. Don't shoot unless you have to, Caleb shouted. Might be a warning shot. Another bullet whistled past. This one was closer. Not a warning. Clara fired. The recoil nearly knocked her backward, but she held steady. The riders behind them scattered, slowing their approach. Did I hit anyone? She gasped. Don't know, but you scared them. Do it again. She fired twice more. The riders dropped back, giving them precious distance. Caleb whipped the horses harder. Silverton appeared on the horizon, a sprawl of buildings that meant safety, or at least witnesses. They thundered into town with the riders still behind them. People on the street scattered. Caleb pulled up in front of the sheriff's office and jumped down, rifle in hand. Stay here, he told Clara. Like hell! She grabbed Emma and followed him inside. The sheriff, a weathered man named Briggs, looked up from his desk in surprise. What's all this? 3 men chasing us, armed, dangerous. Caleb moved to the window. They'll be here in a minute. Briggs stood up, his own rifle coming to hand. This got something to do with Dry Creek business? Everything to do with it, the sheriff cursed. Nathaniel Garrett? You know him? Know of him. Federal marshal's been asking questions about land fraud in your county. Garrett's name keeps coming up. Briggs checked his rifle. You got proof of something? Working on it. The riders appeared at the edge of town, then stopped. They sat on their horses, staring at the sheriff's office, clearly calculating whether the risk was worth it. After a tense minute, they turned and rode away. Caleb let out a breath he'd been holding. Clara sagged against the wall, still clutching the revolver. Emma was crying silently, her face buried in her mother's dress. You folks need to tell me what's going on, Briggs said. Caleb explained quickly. The debt, the threats, the suspicion that Frank Bennett's death wasn't an accident, the ledgers that might prove Garrett's crimes. Briggs listened without interrupting. You got a lot of suspicions and not much proof, he said when Caleb finished. That's why we're here. Frank rented a storage locker. Number 47. If the ledgers are there, that's if. Briggs holstered his rifle. Storage facility's 3 streets over. I'll escort you. But if this turns out to be a wild goose chase, you're on your own getting back to Dry Creek. Fair enough. They walked through Silverton with the sheriff leading the way. Clara kept Emma close, one hand on her daughter's shoulder, the other still holding the revolver. People stared. Word was already spreading that strangers had ridden into town, being chased by gunmen. The storage facility was a long building with numbered doors. The clerk was an old man who squinted at the receipt for a long moment before nodding. Yeah, Bennett rented that locker. Paid 3 months in advance. That was... He consulted a ledger. 5 months ago. Locker's past due. Can we access it? Caleb asked. Technically, it's been abandoned. I got the right to break the lock and auction the contents. The clerk scratched his chin. But if you're family, I suppose I could make an exception. Cost you $20. Caleb laid down the money without hesitation. The clerk led them to locker 47 and produced a set of keys. The lock opened with a rusty click. Inside was a single leather satchel. Clara's breath caught. That's Frank's. He took it everywhere. Caleb lifted it out carefully. It was heavy. He opened it, and there they were. 3 ledgers, their pages filled with Frank's cramped handwriting. Names, dates, amounts, mining claims. And at the top of page after page, Garrett Enterprises. Dear God, Sheriff Briggs whispered, looking over Caleb's shoulder. This is enough to hang him. Can you take it to the federal marshal? Caleb asked. I can, but you realize what this means? Garrett's not going to let this go. He'll come after you with everything he's got. I know. And if he can't get to you, he'll get to her. Briggs nodded at Clara. Or the child. I know that too. Clara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. How long until the marshal can act on this? Week, maybe 2. He's in Denver right now. I'll wire him. Send the ledgers by secure transport. But Garrett will know something's wrong the moment those riders report back that you made it here alive. Then we can't go back to Dry Creek, Clara said. We need to disappear until the marshal moves. Where? Caleb asked. We go back to my ranch, he'll find us. Stay here, same problem. I got a cabin, Briggs offered, up in the mountains, about 10 miles north. Nobody knows about it except me and my wife. You could hole up there until the marshal makes his arrest. Caleb looked at Clara. She looked at Emma. The little girl was staring at the ledgers like they were something that might bite her. Is that what killed Papa? Emma asked quietly. Everyone turned to her. Clara knelt down, taking her daughter's hands. No, baby. Bad men killed Papa. These books are going to help punish those bad men. Will they punish Mr. Garrett? Yes. Good. Emma's voice was fierce, nothing childlike about it. I hope they hang him. The adults exchanged glances. Clara hugged her daughter tight, whispering soothing words, but Emma's face remained hard. She'd seen too much, learned too young that the world was full of men who hurt people and got away with it. They were loading supplies for the cabin when a commotion erupted on the street. Shouting, the sound of many horses. Caleb's stomach dropped. That can't be. But it was. Nathaniel Garrett rode into Silverton with 8 men behind him. Not just Pike Stevens and the usual thugs. These were hired guns. Professionals with dead eyes and expensive weapons. Morrison! Garrett's voice echoed through the street. I know you're here. Bring out the widow and we can settle this peaceful. Sheriff Briggs stepped out of the storage facility, his badge gleaming in the sunlight. You're out of your jurisdiction, Garrett. This is my town. Just here to collect on a debt, Sheriff. The widow owes me money. I got the right to pursue collection. Not with 9 armed men, you don't. Garrett smiled. These are my business associates. We're here on legal business. The hell you are! Briggs raised his voice. You and your men need to turn around and ride out. Now. Can't do that. Not until I get what's mine. Caleb emerged from the building, Clara and Emma behind him. She doesn't owe you anything. The debt died with Frank. That's not how it works, and you know it. Garrett's eyes locked on the leather satchel in Caleb's hands. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, then fury. What have you got there, Morrison? Nothing that concerns you. I think it does. I think that's Frank's bag. I think you've been busy little rats, digging up things that don't belong to you. These ledgers belong to the law now, Briggs said. They're evidence in a federal investigation. Garrett's mask of civility cracked. Give me those ledgers. No. Give them to me or I'll take them. And anyone who gets in my way dies, starting with the girl. One of his men drew a rifle, aiming it at Emma. Clara screamed and threw herself in front of her daughter. Caleb raised his own rifle. Briggs did the same. Suddenly, the street was full of armed men pointing weapons at each other. "You're willing to kill a child over this?" Caleb asked, his voice deadly calm. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect what's mine. Those ledgers disappear, or everyone in this street dies." Garrett's hand moved to his gun. "Your choice, Sheriff. You and one cowboy against 9 professionals. How do you like those odds?" "I like them fine," a new voice said. Everyone turned. 6 men emerged from various buildings around the street, all armed, all wearing deputy badges. Briggs smiled grimly. "Telegraphed ahead when I heard you might be coming, Garrett. Silverton takes care of its own, and we don't take kindly to threats against children." The odds had shifted. Garrett's face purpled with rage, but he was smart enough to know he was beaten. For now. "This isn't over," he snarled. "No," Caleb agreed. "It's not. But when it is, you'll be in a federal prison, or at the end of a rope." Garrett and his men turned and rode out, but not before Garrett looked directly at Clara and said, "I'll see you again, Mrs. Bennett. Real soon. And next time, there won't be a sheriff to hide behind." After they were gone, Briggs let out a long breath. "You folks need to get to that cabin, now, before he comes back with more men." They loaded up quickly. Briggs gave them directions to the cabin and promised to keep the ledgers secure until the marshal arrived. As they were leaving, the old storage clerk called out, "Hey, almost forgot. Bennett left something else when he rented the locker. Said if anything happened to him, it should go to his wife." He handed Clara a sealed envelope. Her hand shook as she took it. "What is it?" Emma asked. "I don't know, baby." They didn't open it until they were miles from town, the cabin finally in sight. It was small and weathered, but solid, hidden in a grove of trees with a creek running nearby. Caleb checked inside. Empty, clean, defensible. While he unloaded supplies, Clara sat on the porch steps and opened Frank's envelope. Inside was a single page, his handwriting rushed and unsteady. She read it once, then again. Then she let it fall from her fingers, her face gone white. "Clara?" Caleb moved to her side. "What is it?" He knew. Her voice was hollow. Frank knew Garrett was going to kill him. This letter. It's dated the day before he died. Caleb picked up the letter and read. "Clara, if you're reading this, I'm dead. I'm sorry for everything. The gambling, the drinking, the hitting. I was weak, and you deserved better. But I want you to know I tried to do one thing right. I found proof of what Garrett's been doing. The murders, the fraud, all of it. I put it in those ledgers. But there's more. The worst of it. I hid it somewhere Garrett will never think to look. In the place where you and I first met. Where I promised to be a better man. You'll know what I mean. Use it to destroy him. And please, tell Emma I loved her. Even if I was bad at showing it. Frank." Clara's tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. "The place where we first met," she whispered. "That was the old church in Dry Creek, the one that burned down 2 years ago." "Is there anything left of it?" "Just the foundation, some stones." She looked up at Caleb. "He hid something there, something worse than what's in the ledgers." "We can't go back to Dry Creek, not with Garrett looking for us. We have to. Whatever Frank hid, If it's worse than fraud and land theft, it's murder, Caleb finished. Proof of murder. Emma appeared in the doorway, her small voice cutting through the tension. Papa left me a message? Clara quickly folded the letter. He said he loved you, baby. That's all. Did he mean it? The question hung in the air. Clara pulled her daughter close. I think he tried to, in his own way. That night, after Emma was asleep, Clara and Caleb sat outside the cabin. The stars were bright, the night cool after the brutal heat of the day. We have to go back, Clara said. I know. It's a trap. You know that, right? Garrett will be waiting. Probably. Then why go? Caleb took her hand. Because Frank was right about one thing. Garrett needs to be destroyed. Not just arrested. Destroyed. And whatever's hidden in those ruins might be the thing that does it. Or it might get us all killed. That too, she laughed bitterly. You're honest, at least. Most men would lie. Tell me it'll be fine. I'm done lying. To you or to myself. He turned to face her. Clara, if we do this, if we go back to Dry Creek, there's a good chance we don't make it out. So I need to say something now, while I have the chance. Don't. Please don't say goodbye. I can't hear it. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying... He took a breath. I'm saying... I love you. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. But from the moment I saw you in that store, standing up to those bastards with nothing but pride and fire, I knew. You're what I've been looking for my whole life. And Emma? That girl's got more courage in her little finger than most men have in their whole body. I want to be part of your lives. If we survive this. If you'll have me. Clara was crying now, tears streaming down her face. You stupid, beautiful fool. Of course I'll have you. I told you last night. I'm falling in love with you. I've been falling since you paid for my flower. Since you taught me to plant seeds. Since you looked at my daughter like she mattered. She kissed him hard. So don't you dare die on me, Caleb Morrison. Don't you dare. I'll do my best. They held each other as the night deepened. Tomorrow, they'd figure out how to get back to Dry Creek without getting killed. Tomorrow, they'd search the ruins of an old church for evidence that might save them or doom them. But tonight, they had this moment of peace, this admission of love in a world that seemed determined to tear them apart. And for now, that was enough. Inside the cabin, Emma lay awake, listening to the adults talk. She understood more than they thought. Understood that her papa had been bad, but had tried to be good at the end. Understood that Mr. Caleb loved her mama. Understood that the bad men were still out there. She clutched her cornhusk doll tight and made herself a promise. She wouldn't be scared anymore. She'd be brave, like Mama. She'd fight, like Mr. Caleb. And if the bad men came for them, she'd be ready. Even if she was only 7 years old. Even if she was small. She'd be ready. They returned to Dry Creek 3 days later, riding in after midnight when the town was dark and sleeping. Caleb left Clara and Emma hidden in the woods outside town, with strict instructions to run if anything went wrong. Clara had argued, but one look at Emma's frightened face had settled it. You find what Frank hid, you come straight back, Clara whispered. You hear me? No heroics. Yes, ma'am. She grabbed his face and kissed him hard. I mean it, Caleb. We need you alive. He touched his forehead to hers. I'll come back. I promise. The church ruins sat at the edge of town, overgrown with weeds and forgotten by most. Caleb moved through the darkness carefully, every shadow a potential threat. The foundation stones were still there, cracked and blackened from the fire. He knelt and began searching, running his hands over each stone, looking for anything loose or out of place. Nothing. He searched for an hour, desperation building. Maybe Frank had been delirious when he wrote that letter. Maybe whatever he'd hidden had been destroyed in the fire or found by someone else. Maybe... His hand caught on something. A loose stone near what had been the altar. He pried it free and found a metal box wedged into the space behind it. His heart hammered as he pulled it out and opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Men lying dead in mining tunnels, documents showing false accident reports, and a ledger, smaller than the others, written in Garrett's own hand, listing names and dates. 8 men dead over 3 years. 8 murders disguised as accidents. And at the bottom of the box, a signed confession from a man named Jacob Mills, swearing that Garrett had paid him to sabotage the mine supports that killed Frank Bennett and 3 others. Looking for something, Caleb spun around. Nathaniel Garrett stood 10 feet away, a gun in his hand. Behind him, Pike Stevens and 4 other men emerged from the darkness. "Wondered when you'd come back for this," Garrett said. "Frank was sloppy, drunk when he hit it. One of my boys saw him stumbling around the ruins that night. Figured he was just being maudlin about his wedding day. Took me a while to put it together, but I got there eventually." Caleb's hand moved toward his gun. 3 rifles cocked simultaneously. "Don't," Garrett said softly. "You're fast, Morrison, but not faster than 5 bullets. You kill me, the marshal's already got the ledgers from Silverton. It's over. The ledgers prove fraud. Financial crimes. I'll do some prison time, pay some fines, be out in 5 years." Garrett gestured to the box. "But that proves murder. Multiple murders. That puts a rope around my neck." He stepped closer. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me that box. Then you're going to walk away from Clara Bennett and never look back. Do that, and you live. Refuse, and I kill you right here. Then I kill the widow. Then I take that little girl and make sure she disappears somewhere no one will ever find her." Caleb's blood ran cold. "You touch Emma, I'll kill you. I don't care how many men you have." Big words from a man with 5 guns pointed at him. "Let him go." Everyone turned. Clara stood at the edge of the ruins, Emma beside her, both of them holding revolvers. Clara's hand shook, but her voice was steady. "I told you to stay hidden," Caleb said, "and I don't take orders." Clara aimed her gun at Garrett. "Let him go, or I shoot." Garrett laughed. "You couldn't hit me from there if you tried, widow. And even if you could, my men would cut you and the girl down before—" Clara fired. The bullet took Garrett's hat clean off his head. The laughter died. "Next one goes through your skull," she said. "Now drop the gun." "You crazy bit—" She fired again. This bullet hit the ground between Garrett's feet. Emma raised her own gun, pointing it at Pike Stevens with surprising steadiness. "Mama taught me to shoot this week," Emma said, her voice high but firm. "Mr. Caleb says I'm a natural. Want to see?" The standoff held for a long, terrible moment. Then Garrett slowly lowered his gun. "Smart man," Clara said. "You think this changes anything?" Garrett snarled. "You think you've won? I own this town. I own the sheriff. You got nowhere to run." "He's right about one thing," a new voice said. Sheriff Watson emerged from the darkness, his own gun drawn. Caleb's heart sank. If Watson was with Garrett— "He don't own me," Watson continued. "Not anymore." Garrett's face went white. "Wade, what are you—" "Shut up, Nat." Watson moved to stand beside Caleb. "Federal Marshal arrived in Dry Creek 2 hours ago. Got the ledgers from Silverton. Got testimony from 6 families who've been too scared to talk until now. And he's got a warrant for your arrest on 14 counts of fraud, 8 counts of murder, and conspiracy to commit both." "You're lying." "Am I?" Watson raised his voice. "Marshal Hendricks, we got him!" 4 men stepped out of the shadows, badges gleaming. The lead marshal, a tall man with iron-gray hair, aimed his rifle at Garrett. "Nathaniel Garrett, you're under arrest for murder, fraud, and racketeering. Men, disarm them." Garrett's men dropped their weapons without a fight. They were hired guns, not martyrs. Pike Stevens looked like he might argue, but one glance at Emma's unwavering gun made him reconsider. Garrett himself just stood there, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and finally, something that looked like defeat. "This is all her fault," he said, pointing at Clara. "That woman seduced my partner, stole from him, killed him." "Save it for the trial," Hendricks said. "Based on what I've seen in those ledgers, you'll be lucky if they let you hang. Personally, I prefer they lock you up and throw away the key." As they led Garrett and his men away in chains, Clara lowered her gun. Her whole body was shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off. Caleb moved to her side and caught her before she collapsed. "I can't believe I did that," she whispered. "I can't believe I shot at him." "You missed on purpose," Caleb said. "Both times." "Of course I did. I'm not a killer. But he didn't know that." She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Is it really over?" "It's really over." Emma dropped her gun and ran to them. Caleb caught her with his free arm, holding both of them as they cried. Relief, terror, joy. Everything they'd been holding back for weeks poured out in that moment. Marshal Hendricks approached, giving them space but clearing his throat to get their attention. "Mrs. Bennett, I'll need you to testify at the trial. All 3 of you, actually. Mr. Morrison, your testimony about the threats and the attack on your property will be crucial." "We'll be there," Caleb said. "Good. Sheriff Watson tells me you've been living at your ranch, Mrs. Bennett." "Not exactly. I was at my farm until—" "Until Garrett made it too dangerous," Watson interjected. "She's been staying at Morrison's ranch for protection. All proper, of course." Hendricks nodded. "Of course. Well, with Garrett in custody, you should be able to return to your property safely. Though I imagine there's quite a bit of repair work needed." Clara's face fell. Caleb knew she was thinking about the broken-down house, the sagging roof, the garden they'd planted that had probably died from neglect. "Actually," Caleb said slowly, "I was thinking Mrs. Bennett and Emma might stay on at my ranch, permanently, if they'll have me." Clara's head snapped up. Emma's eyes went wide. "Mr. Morrison," Hendricks said with a slight smile, "are you proposing to this woman in front of a federal marshal?" "I suppose I am." "Bit irregular." "I've been told I'm irregular." Clara was staring at him like he'd lost his mind. "Caleb, you can't just... We haven't even... I mean, what about..." "Mama," Emma interrupted. "Say yes." "Emma, grown-ups need to discuss these things." "Mama." The little girl's voice was serious. "Mr. Caleb loves us. You love him. I love him. Papa's gone. The bad man's gone. We can be a family now. A real family." Tears welled in Clara's eyes again. "Baby, it's not that simple." "Why not?" Emma demanded. "You told me love was simple. You told me when you find someone good and kind and brave, you hold on to them. Mr. Caleb is all those things." She looked at Caleb. "You want to be my papa?" The question hit him square in the chest. "More than anything, miss." Then it settled. Emma nodded decisively. "We're a family." Clara laughed through her tears. "I think we just got overruled." "Is that a yes?" Caleb asked. You really want to marry a widow with nothing to her name? A woman half the county thought was a murderer? Someone who comes with a 7-year-old daughter who's entirely too smart for her own good? I want to marry the strongest woman I've ever met. Someone who fought for her daughter when the whole world turned against her. Someone who shot a man's hat off to save me. He cupped her face. I want to marry you, Clara, if you'll have me. She kissed him. It was different from the desperate kisses they'd shared before. This was promise. This was future. This was everything they'd fought for. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Yes, you ridiculous, wonderful man. Yes. Emma cheered. Watson grinned. Even Marshal Hendricks cracked a smile. Well then, Hendricks said, I suppose congratulations are in order, though you might want to wait until after the trial to make it official. Jury might look more favorably on your testimony if you're not— We'll wait, Clara said quickly, but not long. No, ma'am, Caleb agreed. Not long at all. The trial took 3 weeks. Clara testified for 2 days, her voice never wavering as she detailed Frank's involvement with Garrett, the abuse she'd endured, the ledgers she'd found. Caleb testified about the threats, the attack on his property, the chase to Silverton. Emma didn't have to testify. The judge ruled she was too young. But she sat in the courtroom every day, watching as justice was finally served. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Garrett guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to hang for the murders and gave him life in prison for the fraud, though everyone knew he'd never see the inside of a prison cell. The hanging was scheduled for a month later. Clara didn't attend the execution. Neither did Caleb or Emma. They were too busy building their new life together. The wedding happened 2 months after Garrett's death, on a Sunday morning with half of Dry Creek in attendance. The same people who'd shunned Clara now filled the church, guilt and relief warring on their faces. Ruth Cooper cried through the entire ceremony. Even Thomas Webb grudgingly admitted that maybe he'd been wrong about the widow Bennett. Clara wore a simple white dress that Ruth had helped her make. Emma stood beside her mother as flower girl, her corn-husk doll tucked into her pocket for luck. And Caleb stood at the altar, in his only good suit, watching the woman he loved walk toward him, knowing that every hard moment, every dangerous choice, every risk he'd taken had led to this. Do you, Caleb Morrison, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And do you, Clara Bennett, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Clara's voice rang clear through the church. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. He did. The church erupted in applause. Emma hugged them both, laughing and crying at the same time. And for the first time in longer than any of them could remember, everything felt right. They held the reception at the ranch. Someone had brought a fiddle. Someone else had brought whiskey. The sun set over the mountains as people danced and ate and celebrated the marriage of the cowboy and the widow who'd defied a whole town to find each other. Late in the evening, after Emma had fallen asleep on a pile of blankets and most of the guests had gone home, Caleb and Clara stood on the porch of their home. Their home. The words still felt new and strange and wonderful. You know what I was thinking? Clara said. What's that? About how I came to Dry Creek 5 years ago with nothing but hope. Met Frank, married him, lost everything. My dignity, my safety, almost my daughter. She leaned against him. And then you rode into town for grain. Just grain, nothing special. Just a man doing what he had to do. And you changed everything. You changed me too. How? Gave me a reason to care again, to fight again, to believe that good things could happen to people who'd lost everything. He kissed the top of her head. You and Emma. You're my second chance. and I'm not going to waste it. You better not. I didn't shoot a man's hat off for nothing." He laughed. "No, ma'am, you certainly didn't." Inside, Emma stirred in her sleep. They both looked through the window at her. This little girl who'd been through so much and somehow kept her courage. "She asked me yesterday if she could call you Papa," Clara said quietly. Caleb's throat tightened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her to ask you herself." "What will you say when she does?" "I'll say yes, if that's all right with you." "More than all right." He pulled Clara closer. "I know I'm not her blood father. I know I can't replace Frank." "You're not replacing anyone. You're becoming something new, something better." Clara turned to face him. "That little girl in there, she's been waiting her whole life for a father who would protect her instead of hurt her, who would teach her to be brave instead of scared, who would love her mama the way she deserves to be loved." Tears shone in her eyes. "You've already been that father, Caleb. The words are just a formality." The next morning, Emma came downstairs to find Caleb making breakfast. She climbed into her chair and watched him for a moment. "Mr. Caleb?" "Yes, miss?" "Mama said I could call you Papa if you said it was okay." He set down the skillet and knelt beside her chair. "Is that what you want?" "Yes," she nodded solemnly. "My first Papa wasn't very good, but I think you'll be better." "I'll try my best." "Will you teach me to ride horses?" "Every day if you want." "And will you protect Mama? Keep her from being sad?" "With everything I have." "And will you stay, even when things get hard?" The question broke his heart. This 7-year-old girl who'd learned that men leave, that promises break, that love comes with conditions. "I'll stay," he promised. "Through hard times and easy times. When you're good and when you're trouble. When your mama's happy and when she's sad. I'll stay, Emma. That's what fathers do." She thought about this. Then she threw her arms around his neck and whispered, "Okay, Papa." Clara appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She'd heard everything. Caleb reached for her, and she came to them, the three of them holding each other in the morning light. Outside, the garden they'd planted months ago was flourishing. The corn was waist-high. The beans were climbing their poles. Everything they'd thought would die had survived and grown stronger. 2 years later, Emma stood in that same garden, her little brother tottering beside her as she showed him which plants were weeds and which were crops. She was 9 now, taller, more confident. The selective muteness was gone, replaced by a girl who talked constantly and laughed easily. "Be careful with the tomatoes, Jamie," she instructed. "They're fragile." Clara watched from the porch, her hand resting on her belly. Another baby was coming in the fall. A girl this time, they thought. They'd name her Hope. Caleb came around the side of the house, dusty from working with the horses. He saw his family, his wife, his daughter, his son, the baby not yet born, and felt something he'd never expected to feel again after Tommy died. Peace. "You look happy," Clara said as he climbed the steps. "I am happy. Even with 3 children to feed? Even with a wife who still can't cook worth a damn? Even with all the hard work and late nights and early mornings?" "Especially with all that," he kissed her. "You know what Sheriff Watson said to me yesterday?" "What?" "Said I was lucky. Said not many men get a second chance at life like this. Said I should appreciate what I have." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him I appreciate it every damn day." He pulled her close. "From the moment I rode into town for grain and left with a widow who changed my life forever." Clara smiled. "That's a good story." "It's our story." "Yes," she agreed. watching Emma teach Jamie to be gentle with growing things, watching the sun set over the land they'd fought to keep, watching their life unfold exactly as it was meant to. Yes, it is. And in that moment, with his family safe and his future bright and his past finally at peace, Caleb Morrison knew that every choice he'd made, every risk he'd taken, every fight he'd fought, every moment he'd chosen courage over comfort, had been worth it. Because sometimes the most important thing a man can do is stand up when everyone else sits down, speak up when everyone else stays silent, and love fiercely when the whole world says to walk away. That's what makes a man truly good. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Not the ease of the path, but the willingness to walk the hard road. Not the safety of being alone, but the courage to build something worth fighting for. Clara had taught him that. Emma had shown him that. And now, standing on the porch of the home they'd built together, surrounded by the family they'd created, Caleb understood that this messy, beautiful, hard-won life was the whole point of everything.